Hello and welcome to this episode of Shatterdice Reviews. And today's board game review is Star Wars Imperial Assault by Fantasy Flight Games. Star Wars Imperial Assault is a game with a special place in my heart. It was about 10 years ago. I was in a bookshop, of all places, when I saw, perched atop a display table in the centre of that shop, this great big box, Star Wars written across the top, and this artwork depicting rebels and imperials in a pitched battle. I immediately found myself picking the box up and looking at the back, curious to what I had found. And I was greeted with this image. I've played Warhammer since the age of 12, and seeing this image gave me the same feeling I had all those years ago when I first passed a Games Workshop store window filled with plastic painted soldiers. Needless to say, I was sold, instantly. A game that combined plastic soldiers with what looked like some kind of modular board. This was nothing I had ever seen before, even though it said on the box 2 to 5 players, and I had no idea who I would ever play this with. I wanted it all the same. Now, I wish I could say this box was that very same box I saw 10 years ago in that bookshop, but it isn't. Instead, I bought the game a few weeks later online after researching what Star Wars Imperial Assault was exactly. And that's how my board game journey began. Well, for any of you still awake, let's get into the actual review of this game, instead of just trips down memory lane. Star Wars Imperial Assault is a tactical miniature skirmish game for 2 to 5 players, set in the world of Star Wars. Up to 4 players will take on the role of rebel commandos engaged in the ongoing struggle against the Galactic Empire to bring peace to the galaxy. One of the players will take on the role of the Imperial player, using the might and inexhaustible resources of the Galactic Empire to stop the rebel commandos achieving their goal. The game takes place over a multi-path branching campaign with multiple endings based on the player's performance throughout. So how does it all work? Well, let's start by taking a look at the rebels. Each rebel player will pick a character and collect the character card and equipment they come with. As you can see here, a character card displays the character's health, stamina, speed, and these attributes along the bottom. And in this space are any of the special abilities the character begins with. Once the rebels are set up, gameplay begins, and each rebel takes their turn. On a rebel's turn, they receive 2 actions. These actions will mostly be moving and attacking. Attacking is a fairly simple affair. The player chooses the weapon card they wish to attack with, then rolls the coloured dice displayed on the card. These dice are custom D6s and come in red, yellow, green and blue. Each die has a combination of 3 results on their faces. This result is a point of damage that will be applied to the target. This numerical result is the accuracy. To successfully hit with a ranged weapon, you must roll an accuracy total equal to or greater than the number of spaces between your miniature and the target. And finally, this lightning bolt is a surge result. Surges have different effects on different weapons, and when rolled may be spent to apply the effect listed on the weapon card. At the same time as the attack dice are rolled, the defender will roll either the white or black defense dice, as detailed on their character card. These symbols block a single point of damage from the attack, and these symbols block a single surge result on the attacker's dice, preventing the attacker from activating that surge ability. When rolling the white defense dice, there is also the chance of rolling this dodge symbol. This result completely negates the attack altogether, regardless of what was rolled. After determining the final amount of damage done, assign wound tokens to the target, and if it is enough to meet or exceed the target's health points, remove the miniature from the board. And that's the basics of attacking. But what is truly important in this game is moving. Each mission in Imperial Assault has a turn limit for the rebels. Take too long and its mission failed, so it's in their best interest to keep moving. A rebel may move a number of squares equal to their speed, and this movement can be split up. So for example, Fen Cygnus here could move 2 spaces, shoot at an enemy with his second action, then move another 2 spaces to safety. This makes movement a very tactical and important aspect of the game. Often, where you move is more important than who you attack. Rebel players need to keep in mind though that the Imperial player can move this way too, and so combat can really have some high tension moments. Rebels also have the ability to rest, which allows them to remove these strain tokens from their character card. Rebels gain strain tokens when instructed to, mostly by special abilities, and if they have too many tokens on their card, they will be unable to use those abilities. It's best to rest fairly regular for the Rebels, as effective use of their abilities is crucial to making it through the mission. In some missions, Rebels will also need to open doors or interact with these terminals. This is usually covered in the mission brief, so I won't go into it here. And that's about it for a Rebel's turn. After a game is won or lost, the campaign will continue on to the next mission, in between which players may use credits to buy new weapons or equipment. They may also spend experience points to learn new skills. Now let's take a look at the Imperial player. The Imperial player does not use a singular powerful character. Instead, they have access to a number of different enemy types, such as stormtroopers or probe droids. Each turn, the Imperial player will gain threat, and this is what they use to spawn in more enemies. Of course, their health is much lower than the Rebels, so it often becomes a test of endurance as the Rebels attempt to wear down more and more of the Imperial units. An enemy card looks like this and contains their speed, skills and health, as well as what dice they roll in combat. It's worth noting here that much like Rebels, movement can be as important to the Imperial player. As they have more figures, it is quite possible to block the Rebel player's path and waste their time as they attempt to cut through an ocean of stormtroopers. I would recommend, if you are the Imperial player, to use this tactic very sparingly. It is the fastest way to ensure the Rebel players have a miserable time and give up on the campaign. Just like Rebels upgrading, so too does the Imperial player. They may spend their experience on these faction cards, which will give them some dirty tricks to play against the Rebels. And that's about the basics of gameplay. Now let's take a look at how the campaign works. The campaign structure for Imperial Assault is fairly typical in that it involves a series of linked missions that tell a story. Imperial Assault, however, injects side missions into its campaign, accomplishing several things that make this game feel more fleshed out. Firstly, doing a side mission causes the revelations in the story to be teased out more slowly and amps up the tension. Secondly, these side missions give a wider scope to the gaming world, allowing for one-off stories involving spice heists, sabotage, even sometimes bringing in famous characters such as Han Solo or Luke Skywalker. Third and final point on this, they allow for development of the Rebel characters, and I don't mean gaining experience. Imperial Assault has a unique feature to its campaign, where each of the Rebel heroes has a unique mission specific to them. For each Rebel taking part in the campaign, you will add their personal mission, identified by this red border, to the side mission deck. When you complete one of these missions, you will learn something about that character's history, and, if successful, gain a unique reward relevant to that character. I really love this little detail, as it makes the Rebels feel like real people with actual stakes in the rebellion, and not just archetypes with a name. The campaign is also competitive, as this is a one versus all game. This means if the Rebels win or lose, you all move on to the next mission, and that next mission, if it's a story mission, will change depending on who won. This really helps keep up the pace, as there is never a time where a mission has to be replayed. It just keeps chugging along until you reach the finale, and that finale is pretty good, as you will end up with 2 different possible final missions, each one where the Rebel players have different objectives based on information revealed earlier in the campaign. It's a really good little story too, and would make a pretty good film in line with something like Rogue One. In fact, I often refer to Rogue One as Imperial Assault the movie. That's about it for the campaign. But there is still more game in this box. In addition to the campaign material, you also get the rules for a skirmish game. In skirmishes, 2 players will go head-to-head on a fixed map layout using these simplified character cards, the same type used by the Imperial player in the campaign. Players will also have access to a deck of strategy cards. They each build at the start of the skirmish, allowing you each to play tricks and surprises on your opponent. The skirmish game is really nice for getting a little Imperial Assault fix outside of a campaign, and in fact has quite a big following, with skirmish tournaments being held. It's a simple addition, but a nice one. Finally, we're going to have a quick look at the expansion material. Imperial Assault has been around for a long time now, and in that time, it has had many expansions developed. 3 large box campaign expansions were released that introduced new enemies and heroes alongside a new story-driven campaign. 3 small box campaigns that did much the same, but were shorter campaigns with less miniatures. And then there was an absolute plethora of allies and enemy expansions. These were great value for money, only providing a specific ally or villain, which was sometimes a 2 or 3 person squad, but mostly an individual. What made them really worth it was the extra mission for both campaign and skirmish provided with them. This just adds even more content to the campaign and gets you even more mileage out of the game. Here you can see just how many of these mission sheets there are, and there is a lot more available than what I have here. Well, that's about everything, so let's take a look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good. The theme is strong with this one. From the artwork to the plotline, and even the naming conventions of the characters and items, this game feels Star Wars through and through. From a rules perspective, this game uses a lot of regular, tried and tested dungeon crawler mechanics. But what really sets it apart are the dice. These dice are so good, they make me forget that I absolutely despise standard 6-sided cube dice. Squares don't roll, that's why we don't make wheels out of them. Anyway, the multiple symbols on each face make it unlikely to get a completely useless attack roll. The surge symbol also serves as a fantastic dice mitigation symbol, allowing you to increase damage or accuracy or apply some negative condition. The dice themselves are great, and the cherry on top for the combat rolls is that attack and defense dice are rolled simultaneously, meaning if you have the ability to re-roll a die, you can see your opponent's roll before committing any resources needed to the re-roll. The campaign is also a big plus. Even after 10 years of playing this game, I still love this core campaign and will happily play it with anybody who wants to. And of course, as game owner, I almost always play the Empire Force, so it's a good job that it is just as much fun as being a rebel. Before we move on, I think I have to put both the official and unofficial app on here. The official app is from Fantasy Flight Games and allows you to play variations of the 3 big campaigns from the core set, Return to Hoth, and Jabba's Realm without the need for an Empire player, turning it into a fully cooperative experience. This app introduces different missions to the original versions and takes advantage of the app functions to deliver a more immersive experience with sound, voiceovers, and a more in-depth narrative where you actually get to speak with NPCs who have dialogue trees. It also simplifies its side missions into choose-your-own-adventure style interactions with the app. The official app is so sleek and well made, and the fact that it is free makes it a must-have. There's no reason not to. Then there is the unofficial app, Imperial Commander. This is available for download online and is also free. It is a little rougher than the official app, but does most of the same stuff. Its one key difference is that it allows for full cooperative play of all the original campaigns. With Imperial Commander, you don't get alterations to those out-of-the-box missions, you just get to play them as originally intended. Well, that's enough of being a sycophant. Let's take a look at the bad. Well, as you might expect, I don't have much bad to say about this game. Some missions do feel more balanced than others, and there is the problem that if either the Rebels or Empire gets onto a winning streak, it is possible for the campaign to become a bit of a drag as one side starts to run away with victory after victory. And this brings us to Imperial Assault's truly worst point, the Empire player. If you are playing this game, then whoever is playing the Empire cannot be a competitive player. This is because it is too easy for the Empire player to use a simple dirty trick to win almost every game. Flood the board with Stormtroopers. Stormtroopers are cheap and weak, but very easy for the Empire player to spawn and reinforce. which means if they want to win, all they have to do is throw as many stormtroopers between the rebels and their objective as possible. This makes it near impossible for the rebels to actually reach their objective due to action economy, as they will spend all of their actions thinning out the stormtroopers' numbers only for the Empire player to spawn new ones on their turn. This reduces the game to a tedious slog that is not fun at all. If you are the Empire player, don't do this. It guarantees the rebel players will get burnt out on this game very quick. This does sadly also lead to most rebel victories feeling a bit unearned, as you know the Empire player could have won if they really wanted to. That's why it is very important the campaign's Empire player should be someone who loves to tell a story, more like a dungeon master than a competitive opponent. The Ugly. So here is the ugly truth I haven't told you. This game is really just a reskin of Descent 2nd Edition. The mechanics are almost identical, so when I praised those dice earlier and said it really sets it apart, well, from some games yes, but it is really just derivative of another system. And as a newer game, it has had many of its mechanics tightened up and subtly changed, which, believe it or not, does make the gameplay and strategies completely different. Really, it comes down to if you like Star Wars, get this game. If you don't like Star Wars, but do like fantasy, you can still enjoy this great system with Descent 2nd Edition. Well, that's about it. If you haven't already guessed, this game is not boring at all. It is a brilliantly designed game that will bring you hours and hours of fun. I may be a little biased due to the nostalgia of it being an IP I loved as a kid, and it being the game that introduced me to modern board gaming, but I really do think it's a fantastic game that makes a welcome addition to any collection. Well, I'm bored of reviewing this game now. Bye.